pack, my tribe. Welcome to Ghost Wolf Live. Okay, so tonight's show is titled The Cecil Hotel and Other Traps. There's a reason for this, and I'm going to get into it. But first, I thought I would pull something up. One second, folks. Just inputting this real quick, and then I'm going to play you something, and then we'll just get into it. Alright, here we go.
In 2013, something happened in the building behind me that has been called the most mysterious death of the 21st century. You've probably seen and have been haunted by the elevator footage of Elisa Lamb. This place has seen serial killers, devil worshipping, hauntings at a whole other level. There is no place in the entire planet that I have been wanting to investigate more. This is it. This is the mecca of paranormal investigating. The Cecil Hotel.
Every hotel has suicides. Every hotel maybe would have a murder or two. Not like this. But Richard Ramirez stayed here in 1985.
He was staying here when he killed.
Yeah.
The water tank where they found Elisa Lamb's body. Many speculate she climbed this ladder, opened the very heavy lid up top, jumped in.
What drove her erratic behavior? Could it be she was influenced by something contrary by a previous guest? Richard is with me. He said hi to you.
Why does he want to say hi to me?
He said, you got me.
Are you kidding me? The evil that is in this building, it's staying in this building. This is the first and the last time that they will ever allow anybody to walk into that building with cameras. It does not get any bigger and more sinister than this.
Alright, so the reason I wanted to play that is because there's a lot of the history of that place in particular that they actually didn't cover. That nobody, as far as I can tell, has ever covered. Because it goes much farther back than Elisa Lamb and Richard Ramirez. Okay? And I think probably the only reason they haven't covered what I'm about to bring up is because for some of it, there's no documentation in the sense of like hotel registry, that kind of thing. But there are some photographs out there that would allude to what I'm about to tell you potentially being fact. In 1947, there is a very good chance that Elizabeth Short, better known to the world as the victim, the Black Dahlia, stayed in that hotel right around the time she was murdered. Not the hotel she was in the day she was murdered, but maybe the hotel before that. Definitely within that year. She was actually hopping from hotel to hotel. Mostly because she was pretty much broke. Trying to make it big. Ironically, and it's really sad when I kind of think about it, but ironically, she spent her entire life trying to be famous. And the only time she ever achieved that was when she was killed. Kind of sad when you think about it. Anyways, coincidentally, Richard Ramirez, by the way, was not the only known killer or serial killer to actually stay in the Cecil Hotel. He's just probably the most famous. There was another serial killer right around the same time that stayed there that was from Sweden. You, believe it or not, in Sweden, had a even bigger reputation than Richard Ramirez had here. And I don't remember the gentleman's name. I'm not going to look it up because it doesn't matter. It's not the point. So, here's where we get into the paranormal part of all this with the Cecil. Okay. And I found it to be really odd in a way because people have investigated there before. It's just you're just not allowed to bring cameras. Okay. Or you can probably bring cameras, you just can't have them on. Either way, in any case, you're not allowed to film it, is my point. So, Ghost Adventures doing this is kind of really cool in that way. But, once again, focus on the negative to get ratings, and you're only seeing half the story. So, anyhow, but as far as I can tell, nobody's theorized or come up with a decent theory, anyways, of why the place is even haunted to begin with. Okay, it's always, because people were killed here. But the truth is, there were reportings of that place being haunted before anything even happened. Like, basically from the time it was built. There were carpenters and stuff that were working in the building as it was being built that were reporting activity, like way back in the day. I actually read some of it. Like a long time ago, when I lived in Southern California, I actually was part of a group called San Diego Ghost Hunters. Not to be confused with the one that exists now. It was actually a totally different group, not even at all associated. We were not that big. But we investigated places like the Star of India and the Whaley House, and stuff around San Diego like that. And then the opportunity came up that we were going to investigate the Cecil Hotel, and we did, but it almost didn't happen. So it was around early 90s, maybe mid 90s, I want to say. And what had happened is we were actually contacted by one of the residents in the hotel, because the Cecil Hotel catered to people that didn't have a lot of money back then. And that's changed a lot over the years, but I digress. So, anyways, this individual had contacted us and said that there was stuff going on in his room. So we were just there to investigate this one room. Okay, it wasn't even like the whole hotel. It was one room. And that room was room 312. Okay, and that's actually an important room, and we'll get back to that. So, we go there, and of course there's like five of us, and we've got all of our equipment and stuff, and we walk in, and they were just on site because of all the equipment and stuff. They were ready to throw us out of the hotel. And then we explained that we were contacted by this person that's living here, and they just want us to investigate the room, et cetera, et cetera. And we managed to convince, I don't know if they were like the manager or the owner at that time, but whoever they were like the person in charge. We managed to convince them to let us investigate this one room. And we did. But here's the thing. The room was on the third floor, and for my long-time listeners, you already know this, but since a young age, I can see spirits, okay? I'm not going to get into the whole thing. That's all I'm going to say about that. But immediately when I walked into this place, I saw ghosts waiting around in the lobby, almost as if they were waiting for us. And so we had to basically sign almost like a non-disclosure agreement, but it wasn't non-disclosure. It was basically an agreement stating that we weren't allowed to use any footage from the hotel. Okay? And we didn't. We never did. In fact, we did film a little bit of what was going on in the room, but that was merely so that we could review it. We never shared it with anybody. So anyways, we go up to this guy's room where we investigate, and yeah, there's definitely some shit going on there. Because pretty much the second we walked into this tiny room, which is like his entire room was maybe, no, not even quite as big as my bedroom. Okay, so a very small space, and there was it was like a typical residential hotel if you've ever been in one of those. It's a really small space, but it's got like a bed, and then you've got like a sink and maybe like a microwave or a little stove or burners or whatever, and then you've got a toilet, maybe if you're lucky, if it's not communal, bathrooms. Anyhow, so that's basically what it looked like. So small space. So picture 5 people trying to fit into a room that's really only designed for like one. But we go in and shit literally starts moving immediately. There was this tiny little like table. It was actually a writing table. It was about the size of like most end tables, and there was a little chair in front of it, and the chair literally slid across the floor and would have went out into the hallway if we hadn't been standing in the doorway. And we're like, okay, so let's get set up. And we did. We quickly set up. And keep in mind, this is before the time of like digital recorders and stuff. So we didn't have a lot of the equipment like we do now. Our EVP session was taped on a mini cassette recorder. The camera we were using actually took film. I forget what the actual size was, but it was reminiscent of like an 8mm film camera, basically. And and that was pretty much it. We did have like some sound equipment, like boom mics and shit like that, but it was really kind of early days still, I guess you could say, of paranormal investigating. So we're in this guy's room for maybe like half an hour. It wasn't a long investigation at all, as it wouldn't have been, because it doesn't take that long to explore a space that small. So we're asking questions, and we're unaware of whether or not we're getting responses, but you could definitely sense we weren't alone. And so, that was that, and we left. And then, we did the follow-up stuff where, like, we reviewed the evidence and then shared it with the person who called us in the first place. And this is like weeks, maybe a month later. But the thing is like something stuck in my head. Something wouldn't let me let it go. And so I started to research it. I started to research not just the Cecil Hotel. I started to research what was there before the Cecil Hotel was built. And that wasn't a good thing to look into, evidently. Because what I found out is that prior to it being the Cecil Hotel, it was I guess you could call it a hotel too, but it was much smaller, and it catered to the Chinese community of the time. And this is like early 1900s, late 1800s, and there's a lot of tension between the Chinese and the white townsfolk. In fact, they're at the Pico Hotel, which isn't all that far away from the Cecil. There was actually a documented case of basically like a gang war almost, a riot happened between whites and Chinese, and a lot of people were killed. Well, that same kind of thing happened at this place where the Cecil Hotel was. And so I'm like, oh, okay, well, that explains some stuff. And then through my research, I came across some, I guess you could call it secondhand testimony, dealing with like Elizabeth Short, saying that she had stayed in room 312. But that room number keeps popping up You know, uh, like Elisa Lamb actually stayed in that room. I mean, yeah, it could be written up as coincidence or whatever by the more skeptical, but maybe it's not. You know, maybe it's not. And coincidentally, room 312, or it wasn't actually room 312 at the time, as when this other hotel was there, this spot, I guess you could say, where the leader of the Chinese Union, which was involved in this big riot, fight, whatever you want to call it, would have his room would have been roughly right around where 312 was. I'm not saying it was exactly there, but I mean it would have been kind of close. So I mean, if you add all that together, it's like this place, this particular spot, for whatever reason, was like a vortex, a vacuum that just sucked in all the negative shit. But here's the thing. If you know me at all, if you've listened to my show before, you know I'm a big time, or how should I say it? I'm like big time into not focusing on the negative. I'm very much about the positive aspects of hauntings. I don't want to get to know the evil douchebag that lived down the hall. I want to know the good people that are still there, that have stories to tell that have never been heard because nobody's ever bothered to hear them. That's what I'm about. It's what my team's about. It's what we're always going to be about. It doesn't mean that we don't, come across evil in our work. Of course we do, especially when I have to do house cleansings. And it turns out to be something legit evil, of course. But it's not what we focus on as a team. That isn't our mission. Okay? Our mission is to make contact with not evil spirits. If that makes sense. So, anyways, there's other places that have that same kind of vortex going for itself. Cecil is probably like the one that sticks out in everybody's mind. I would say mainly because of the whole Elisa Lamb thing. And they're not necessarily wrong, by the way. But it's simply not the only one. Because that same kind of thing happens in other places I know about. Some which I've investigated, some which I haven't. Good example of that, in my mind, would be the old Washoe Club. Would be a key example of that. Or Bobby Mackey's. Or another good example would be the Goldfield Hotel in Nevada. All places, by the way, which Ghost Adventures has done episodes at. And that's probably why they've done them there, to be honest. But there's other places too that, people at large have never heard of. There was a place that was very much like that we used to investigate on a semi-regular basis called the Old Gas Company in Mansfield, Ohio. The Old Gas Company was actually owned by the Mansfield Fire Museum. or the same board or whatever. I don't know how that whole thing was organized. Doesn't matter. Anyways, we investigated there, and it was the old Columbia Gas Company from Mansfield back in, like, I guess, like the 70s, 80s, whatever. And there was some surprisingly dark shit that happened there. Because you think gas company, you don't think that, that would at all be associated with rape and murder, but that's not what we got. We got it very much associated with that, in the sense that we made contact with a woman that was, according to her, raped and murdered there. But that wasn't the only, like, thing that happened. That was just the thing we had some evidence of due to EVPs and spirit box, etc., etc. So we would investigate there, and a couple of times some really negative shit happened. For example, one of our investigators, Cody, had this, it was like an iPad kind of thing. It might have actually been an iPad, but he took a picture of me, and when he would zoom in on my face wasn't my face. It was like my body, my head, but somebody else's face on it. Right? And so I took the iPad or whatever it was from him and took a picture of Cody, and in that picture, he had no face. It was like that I forget what horror movie that was, but that, yeah, The Matrix, like when they're looking and they see that, like, makes like the person's like eyes and facial features disappear. That's what it looked like in this picture. And all these places that are like that, they're heavily charged. They are, but they it's not even necessarily that they within themselves are negative, because there's a lot of positive shit there too. But it's just that that's what sticks out with people is, this negative thing happened here. A good example of this is, you say Mansfield to most people, right? Immediately they're thinking of the reformatory, the prison there, right? The old prison where they filmed Shawshank and all that stuff. It's immediately what they think of. What they don't know about is all these other places that are in Mansfield, some of which are even more active than the reformatory. Like the Fire Museum, or the old gas company, or the Eagles Club, or the Women's Club, or the Renaissance Theater, right? But you never hear about those on TV. Or the Bispham Building, which has been on TV. It just still gets ignored, though, and all this stuff. But people evidently like to be scared, and that's okay. I'm not coming down on people like that, because that's the reason why horror movies exist. Okay, and I'm a horror movie fan myself. I get it. But there's so much more to the story. Even better aspects to the story. Okay, because let me give you, I'll tell you a story, and this will kind of illustrate what I'm trying to talk about here. So I had the opportunity to investigate the Mansfield Reformatory. Okay, I was with members of my team that are no longer on my team. Some of them I'm very thankful for that fact. Some of them I think were awesome people, and it just didn't happen for whatever reason. But I digress. So there was altogether, I think there was like 10 of us. And my friend Cody was with me. And we went to the reformatory, and there was like 8 other teams in the reformatory that night. So it wasn't just our team. There were like 8 other teams there too. And none of them were getting shit in the way of evidence. And, I very quickly realized that the problem these people were having was due to their approach, because all these teams were teams that became teams because they watched shows like Ghost Adventures and Ghost Hunters and all this shit. So in their mind, they think they have to provoke in order to get anything going. So I'm like, fuck that. That's not us. That's never going to be us. There's a place and time for everything, but, provoking should never, ever be your default move. Because the reality is that if it's not something you would say to somebody in their own home, don't fucking say it. Because that's exactly what you're doing. But anyhow, not the point. So we go in there. We go into probably one of the most notorious areas of the entire prison, which was the West Wing. Okay? And the West Wing, on the 3rd tier, was where, I forget the gentleman's name now, but the guy burned himself alive in his cell. Right? And we went to that cell, and we didn't get anything as far as like EVPs or anything visual, but there was a 10 degree difference on our laser thermometer in that room. And you could sense you're not alone. They just simply didn't want to talk, at least not at that moment. And time was limited because there were, trying to be nice, but the only way I could say it is there were fucking morons all over the place. And so anyways, I stepped out of that cell, and I said, okay, look, guys, we're not going to sit here and yell at you. We're not going to provoke you. We're not going to try and make you feel bad for whatever you did in your life. As far as I'm concerned, your debt's been paid. I'm just here to communicate. And as soon as I finished that sentence, shadow figures started coming out of cells right in front of us. Like thick, dark shadow figures that we could see with our own eyes. Not just me, like the 2 other people that were with me at that time could see it too. And then, of course, right as I'm about to get it on film, these idiots come around the corner at the other end with a fucking flashlight on. God, that still pisses me off today. Anyways, my point is, though, is that our approach works. And the simplest way I can explain that to you is you can catch more flies with honey. So true of the paranormal world. Nobody wants to talk to an asshole. Why should it be any different for ghosts, for spirits? Because they're still people, they're just people who don't have a physical body anymore. And people don't like to talk to assholes. So if you act like an asshole, they're not going to want to talk to you. They're probably going to want to fuck you up, actually. So, anyways, another good example of what I was talking about before with the whole that same kind of vacuum, that same kind of vortex, would actually be the Stanley Hotel. Another prime example of that. There's a lot of other shit that happens in there, but everybody focuses on the more negative aspects because I don't know, they like to be scared, or they think that's what's going to get ratings or whatever. But I will tell you, I've been doing this for 30 years, and the best, or one of the best, if not the best, paranormal picture I ever took was in a place called the Brown Palace Hotel in downtown Denver. It was actually built for the unsinkable Molly Brown, who, by the way, was one of the founders of Denver in a lot of ways. Her and her husband, whose name I forget. But anyways, he built, I don't know if she had it built or if he built it for her as like a gift. But either way, the Brown Palace Hotel is a fantastic building. Even without the supernatural stuff, it's stunning. It's gorgeous. Okay? And it's got one of the oldest bars in all of Denver that is historic, that a lot of historic things happen in its basement. Okay? So, anyways, this picture I took was in the lobby right around 3 p.m. in the afternoon, middle of the day, full-bodied apparition of a World War II soldier in full dress uniform. And you can see every single detail. You can see the badges on his uniform and the medals. You can see the stitches on the sole of his patent leather shoes as he's walking. But that place gets ignored because nothing super negative ever happened there. Unlike the Stanley Hotel, which, suffered murders and suicides and this and that and everything else. But they forget, and I think this should make it worthy of full-blown investigation alone. What I found out is that in the 1800s, I forget the exact date, I could probably look it up, but the tavern in the basement of the Brown Palace Hotel was hosting a poker tournament. And these two guys entered this tournament, didn't know each other, but became friends over I think it was like 3-week event. And those two guys were Wyatt Earp and Wild Bill Hickok. Now here's where the irony comes in. they both left Denver when the tournament was over. Wild Bill Hickok went to Deadwood and his eventual death, and Wyatt Earp went to Tombstone and his place in history. But they met there in Denver at the Brown Palace Hotel. Pretty cool. Anyways, folks, I am looking at the time, and it's about that time. So until next time, my pack, my tribe, peace out.